The observation, the Carathian science vessel. Eternal logic drifted silently through the void, its crystalline hull reflecting the distant light of Sol. For 3 standard galactic cycles, they had been observing the third planet from this star, cataloging the bizarre species that called themselves humans. Commander Vexar stood at the observation deck, his forearms crossed in what his species recognized as deep contemplation. His secondary brain processed data streams, while his primary consciousness wrestled with a disturbing conclusion. Humans made no sense. The holographic displays around him showed thousands of data points, each one more confusing than the last. Dr. Kreval, the ship's chief xenobiologist, floated beside him on her anti-gravity platform, her tentacles writhing in frustration. She had studied over 300 sentient species across the galaxy, but humans defied every established pattern of intelligent life. "Commander, observe this," she said, highlighting a section of data. "They spend approximately 1/3 of their life cycle in a state of complete unconsciousness. They call it sleep. During this time, they are utterly defenseless, producing vivid hallucinations they term dreams. No other apex species in our database exhibits such a fatal flaw." Vexar's chromatic skin shifted to purple, indicating puzzlement. The recording showed humans lying motionless for hours, their brain activity spiking in chaotic patterns. From an evolutionary standpoint, it was suicide. Any predator could easily eliminate them during these vulnerable periods. Yet somehow humans had not only survived but had become the dominant species on their death world. "Perhaps their technology compensates," suggested Navigator Thrix, his singular eye focusing on the urban centers displayed on another screen. But even as he said it, his voice carried doubt. The human cities were studies in contradiction. Instead of the efficient hexagonal structures used by most advanced civilizations, humans built chaotic sprawls of varying architectures. Buildings of different heights stood side by side, some decorated with purposeless ornamentation, others stark and utilitarian. Streets curved and meandered rather than following optimal pathways. Parks and gardens interrupted industrial zones. It was as if they had never heard of basic efficiency principles. "Their social structure is equally baffling," Kreval continued, pulling up sociological data. "They form emotional bonds that actively impair their decision-making. They call it love. They will sacrifice optimal outcomes for these attachments. Parents will give their lives for offspring who may be genetically inferior. They maintain connections with elderly individuals who no longer contribute to society's productivity." The bridge crew gathered around as more anomalies were presented. Humans spent vast resources on something called art, creating objects and experiences with no practical purpose. They engaged in recreational activities that served no evolutionary advantage. They told stories they knew were false for entertainment. They laughed sometimes at their own failures. They cried sometimes from joy. "Look at this," Thrix pointed to a military analysis. "Their warriors are perhaps the most paradoxical of all. They train for efficiency, yet they risk missions to retrieve corpses. They have rules in warfare, agreements not to use certain weapons. They show mercy to defeated enemies. How did such a species survive long enough to achieve spaceflight?" Vexar was about to respond when the communication array activated. The Galactic Council was calling for an emergency session. The hologram of High Arbiter Zethros materialized on the bridge, his ancient face grave with concern. "Commander Vexar, the Council has reached a decision regarding the human question. Their chaotic nature poses a potential threat to galactic stability. You are authorized to make first contact and deliver our ultimatum. They must conform to standard galactic efficiency protocols or face isolation from the interstellar community." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Vexar knew what isolation meant. Without access to galactic trade routes and technology exchanges, humans would be trapped in their solar system, eventually stagnating and declining. It was a death sentence delivered slowly. "Prepare the diplomatic chamber," Vexar ordered. "We'll give them the standard 3 rotations to respond." The message was transmitted to Earth using their most powerful broadcasting arrays. It was simple, direct, and translated into every major human language. The ultimatum outlined the requirements for joining the galactic community: elimination of inefficient sleep cycles through genetic modification, removal of emotional decision-making through neural adjustment, standardization of all architectural and social structures, cessation of resource waste on non-practical pursuits like art and entertainment. The response came in less than 1 rotation. faster than any species had ever replied to a council ultimatum, but it wasn't what they expected. Instead of surrender or defiance, the humans sent a single message: "We invite you to dinner." The bridge crew exchanged confused glances. Krevol ran the message through every translation matrix, searching for hidden meanings or threats. But the result was always the same. The humans wanted to share a meal. It could be a trap, warned Thrix. Perhaps they poisoned their enemies under the guise of hospitality. Scans show no weapons preparations on their planet, reported the tactical officer. If anything, they appear to be celebrating. Vexar made his decision. Prepare a shuttle. I'll go personally. If this is how humanity chooses to face extinction, I would understand why. The descent to Earth was surreal. Instead of military escorts or defensive positions, the humans had laid out what they called a red carpet. Musicians played instruments, creating organized sound patterns that served no tactical purpose. Humans of all ages had gathered, many holding signs with incomprehensible messages like, "Welcome to Earth," and "Let's be friends." The human who greeted him was remarkably unremarkable. Ambassador Sarah Chen was middle-aged by human standards, her hair showing gray streaks that indicated biological degradation. She moved with no enhanced modifications, her breathing was inefficiently constant, and most puzzling of all, she was smiling. "Commander Vexar, welcome to Earth. I'm so glad you could make it. Please follow me. We've prepared something special for you." The venue was a vast hall filled with tables laden with food from every corner of their planet. Humans of every description mingled freely, their inefficient emotional displays everywhere. Children ran between the tables, accomplishing nothing productive. Elderly individuals sat in places of honor despite their diminished capacity. Artists painted scenes of the historic moment while musicians filled the air with their organized noise. "I don't understand," Vexar said directly. "You received our ultimatum. You face isolation and extinction, yet you celebrate?" Sarah's smile grew wider, and she gestured to a seat designed specifically for his physiology. How had they known his exact requirements? When had they had time to construct it? "Commander, before you judge us, let me tell you a story. It's what we humans do, you see. We tell stories. Would you listen to one before making your final report?" Vexar checked his chronometer. He had time. He nodded his consent. Sarah stood and the room grew quiet. Every human turned their attention to her, their eyes bright with an emotion Vexar couldn't identify. She began to speak, her voice carrying across the hall without amplification technology. Once, long ago, there was a species that evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. The ground shook and split. The skies threw down lightning and floods. Predators hunted them. Diseases ravaged them, and the very air could turn poisonous. By all logic, they should have died. She paused, taking a sip of water, an inefficient break in her narrative that somehow made everyone lean forward. But instead of dying, they did something unusual. When the night came and predators hunted, they didn't develop perfect night vision or harder shells. They learned to sleep together, taking turns watching. One would dream while another guarded. The dreams weren't useless hallucinations. They were their minds solving problems, creating solutions, imagining better tomorrows. The revelation Sarah continued her story as Commander Vexar found himself inexplicably drawn in. His analytical mind trying to process why these inefficient narrative pauses made the information more compelling, rather than less. When the cold came, they didn't just grow thicker fur. They discovered something far more powerful. They found that when they sat together around fires sharing stories and songs, their bonds grew stronger. The warmth they created wasn't just physical. It was something that made them willing to face the cold for each other. They called it love, and it made them do impossible things. She walked among the tables now, her hands gesturing to the gathered humans. Children had stopped running to listen. The elderly nodded with knowing smiles. Even the musicians had set down their instruments. "You see, Commander, what you call inefficiencies we call adaptations, but not the kind you're used to. Every species we've studied evolved to fit their environment perfectly. They became specialized, optimized, efficient. But humans? We evolved to adapt to anything." Vexar's secondary brain was processing her words, finding patterns he hadn't seen before. Sarah picked up a piece of bread from the table, holding it up. This bread contains grains from 7 different Earth cultures. Each one was developed by humans who faced different challenges. Some lived in deserts, others in frozen tundras, some by the sea, others in mountains. Instead of one optimal solution, we created thousands. When disaster struck one group, others survived with different methods. Our chaos, as you call it, is actually our greatest strength. She returned to stand before him, and now Vexar noticed something he'd missed. Behind her apparent weakness was something else. Her eyes held a depth of experience, her posture a quiet confidence. She wasn't weak. She was choosing to appear unthreatening. Your species, Commander, eliminated sleep through genetic modification 3,000 years ago. You're awake constantly, always productive. But when the Zeran plague hit your colonies, you had no defense. Your conscious minds couldn't solve it. You lost 40% of your population before finding a cure. Do you know how humans handled the same plague when it reached our colonies? Vexar knew. It was in the files, but he dismissed it as luck. You survived with minimal casualties. We dreamed the solution, Sarah said simply. A child, actually. 9 years old. She had a fever dream about warriors so small they could fight inside blood. Her father was a doctor. He listened to her dream and realized she was describing antibodies. Within days, we had a treatment protocol. What you call inefficient hallucinations, we call innovation. The hall had grown completely silent. Sarah picked up a painting from a nearby easel, showing the Carathian ship among the stars. You say art serves no purpose, but this painting, created in the 2 hours since you arrived, has taught us more about your ship's design philosophy than months of observation. The artist saw patterns your own engineers probably don't consciously recognize. Art isn't waste. It's another way of understanding. Crevel's voice crackled over Vexar's communicator. Commander, you need to see this. The humans. They're everywhere. Sarah smiled, gesturing to a wall that became transparent. Beyond it, holographic displays showed human colonies across the galaxy. Places the Carathians hadn't even detected. Marginal worlds, asteroid belts. The empty spaces between systems that no efficient species would bother with. We've been in space longer than you know, Sarah explained. You looked for us in optimal locations, efficient trade routes, perfect worlds. But humans don't need perfection. We thrive in chaos, in margins, in the spaces others ignore. Our emotions make us irrational enough to try living where logic says we shouldn't. Our art makes us see beauty where others see waste. Our dreams make us imagine possibilities where others see dead ends. Vexar stood, his forearms unfolding in what his species did when faced with paradigm-shifting information. The Council's ultimatum was expected, Sarah finished. We've been monitoring your observations for years. We knew you'd eventually demand we conform. Every species does when they first meet us. The Altarians called us insane. The Betazoids thought we were evolutionarily damaged. The Zenthrans tried to quarantine us. Do you know where they all are now? Vexar did know. They were humanity's strongest allies, their cultures enriched by human art, their sciences advanced by human imagination, their militaries strengthened by human loyalty. But how? He asked, and how do you convert them? Sarah laughed, a sound that Vexar's translator couldn't properly parse as communication. We don't convert anyone. We just show them what we showed you. That there's strength in what appears to be weakness. That efficiency isn't the only path to survival. That perfection is often the enemy of adaptability. She gestured to the feast around them. This meal? Every dish represents a problem humanity solved through inefficiency. Fermented foods that should be toxic but instead preserve nutrition. Spices that serve no nutritional purpose but make eating a joy rather than a chore. Combinations that shouldn't work but do, because someone was foolish enough to try. A young human child approached Vexar, offering him a folded piece of paper. The commander took it carefully with one of his lower arms. It was a drawing, crude by any technical standard, showing him and the child holding hands beneath a rainbow. Useless, inefficient. And yet, she spent the last hour making that for you, Sarah explained. Not because she had to, not for any logical reason, but because she wanted you to feel welcome. That's what humans do. We waste time on kindness, spend resources on beauty, sacrifice efficiency for connection. Vexar found himself carefully folding the drawing, storing it in his uniform pocket. His secondary brain was screaming about the illogical action, but his primary consciousness didn't care. You're military, he said, remembering the analysis. They show mercy, waste resources on retrieving the dead, follow rules that limit their effectiveness. Sarah's expression grew serious. Yes, and that's exactly why we've never lost a war we've chosen to fight. Our enemies expect optimal tactics, efficient strategies. But humans? We do the unexpected. We rescue our wounded under fire, inspiring others to fight harder. We honor our dead, making their sacrifice meaningful. We show mercy, turning enemies into allies. Every inefficiency is actually a different kind of strength. She walked to the window again, pointing at the stars. The galaxy values efficiency above all else. Every species optimized for their niche, perfected their systems, eliminated their weaknesses. But what happens when conditions change? When the unexpected occurs? When the impossible becomes necessary? She turned back to him, and now Vexar saw it clearly. Humanity's power wasn't despite their flaws, but because of them. Their sleep gave them dreams. Their emotions gave them motivation beyond logic. Their art gave them perspective. Their chaos gave them options. We're not asking the galaxy to become like us, Sarah said. We're asking the galaxy to accept that there's more than one way to be strong. Your efficiency is beautiful in its precision. Our chaos is beautiful in its possibility. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Vexar's communicator buzzed again. The Galactic Council was demanding an update. He looked around the hall at the humans sharing their inefficient feast, wasting time on conversation, expending energy on laughter. A child was sleeping in her father's arms while her mother painted the scene. Elderly humans were teaching young ones dances that served no purpose. Musicians had resumed playing their organized noise. It was chaos. It was inefficient. It was illogical. It was magnificent. Ambassador Chen, Vexar said formally, his chromatic skin shifting to a color his species reserved for moments of profound respect. I need to make a call. The connection to the Galactic Council established immediately. High Arbiter Zethros appeared in hologram, along with the other council members. Commander Vexar, your report? High Arbiter, I recommend immediate cessation of the ultimatum and full integration of humanity into the galactic community without conditions. The council erupted in shock, but Vexar continued. Humanity possesses something we've lost in our pursuit of perfection. They have what we need to face the unexpected, the impossible, the unthinkable. They dream solutions we can't compute. They feel connections we can't quantify. They create beauty we can't measure. They are not inefficient. They are differently efficient. He pulled out the child's drawing, holding it up to the scanner. This was given to me by a human child. It serves no logical purpose. It conveys no technical information. It has no trade value. And yet possessing it has already changed my perspective more than 3 years of observation. If a child's drawing can do that, imagine what else humanity might teach us. The council was silent for a long moment. Then High Arbiter Zethros spoke. You've been compromised, Commander. The humans have affected your judgment. Yes, Vexar agreed. They have? And that's precisely why you should listen to me. They've shown me that compromise isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the beginning of something stronger. Sarah stepped forward, addressing the council directly. Members of the Galactic Council, we have a proposition. Give us one solar rotation. Let us send a delegation to each of your worlds. Not to change you, not to convert you, but to show you what you're missing. If after that time you still believe we're a threat to galactic stability, we'll accept isolation. But if even one of you sees what Commander Vexar has seen, then perhaps it's time to redefine what stability means. The debate raged for hours, but in the end, curiosity won. The same inefficient human trait that the Council saw as a weakness became the key to their acceptance. The vote was narrow, but it passed. 1 year later, the Galactic Council chambers had been redesigned. The perfectly efficient hexagonal structure now included a human addition. A garden where delegates could walk and think, where inefficient beauty served an indefinable purpose. The council sessions now included a human innovation called coffee breaks, where informal connections led to unexpected solutions. Commander Vexar stood in that garden, watching Earth's ambassador teach the High Arbiter's child to paint. It was inefficient. It was illogical. It was a waste of resources. It was exactly what the galaxy needed. The truth about humans, he realized, wasn't that they were secretly powerful despite their weaknesses. It was that they had turned their weaknesses into a different kind of power entirely. They had evolved not to be perfect, but to be perfectly imperfect. And in a universe full of optimized species facing unprecedented challenges, humanity's chaos might be the only thing random enough to save them all.